This is the top 10 global anti-Semitism list that is every year. The Wiesenthal Center puts this out. And on this year's list of the top 10, you'll find some unusual names. Unilever is the owner of the famous ice cream, Ben & Jerry's. They're the company, and they do not want to sell their ice cream in Israel and in the West Bank of Israel. But they make no such. If you ask them, would you sell the ice cream in the Palestinian territories, even where Hamas and others are active, they have no problem.
How did this come about?
Because Unilever, there are people on the board who are extreme leftists and don't like Israel. It's as simple as that. And then on USC, you have a person that on USC made horrible anti-Semitic attacks, like kill Jews. And she still remains on the student board. And I can assure you, if such remarks were made against an African American, the university board would have immediately taken action. Why the silence? Why the difference? Why the double standard? Then, of course, you have CARE, no surprise. CARE is basically pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas institution that, of Muslims Brotherhood here in the United States and active all over the world. And then Germany, for their usual every year, there's anti-Semitic attacks and the government doesn't do anything. And then the social media giants who are enablers. They are enablers. Every day you look on those social media giants, you can find things that if Hitler was alive, he'd say, wow, they're outdoing Goebbels.
Which companies are you talking about?
Well, all the companies. Let me give you the list. Telegram, TikTok, Facebook.
Oh, TikTok.
Yes. Here, look at these are things that were put out. Jewish Voice for Peace. And Jewish Voice for Peace, the same thing, extreme left. Israel is to them a cancer. And it's unheard of for Jews to express themselves that way after the Holocaust, when you saw that what happened to Jews around the world, to say such language, it's unprecedented.
They're anti-Israel.
Anti-totally Israel.
But if they're anti-Israel, does it make them necessarily...
Well, listen, if you don't have, after the Holocaust, if every country in the world is entitled to have a country, if Hamas exists, we have no problem with all the terrorist organizations who are part of countries. And only Israel is going to be identified. It's, again, taking us back to the 1930s. These are the 5 MPs in Poland that are anti-Semites. They're members of Poland's members of the parliament, and the signs that they put up using swastikas. And these are the anti-vaxxers from Germany and the Czech Republic. They're from Washington, D.C. They're also active in Vancouver, Canada. They have branches.
And what are they doing? Are they blaming Jews?
They blame Jews for all the world's sorrows.
But COVID? In this
Yes, in everything, yes. And then the BBC. Now the BBC, people don't know this about the BBC. The BBC, 60 years ago, on basically on February 9th, 1943, the director of talks for the BBC said the following. He complained about an interview which strayed into forbidden territory by discussing anti-Semitism. And he said, personally, I don't want to touch the subject, except by implication in talks on other subjects, he wrote. In other words, the BBC person in charge of getting people on the air said everything is okay, but never discuss anti-Semitism, and which is unbelievable. Now, that happened in 1943. Now, this is repeating itself today. The BBC, here's what happened to the BBC. As you know, the person in the BBC, a reporter, said the following. Israel is more Nazi than Hitler. Oh, Hitler was right. IDF, go to hell. Pray for Gaza. This is a reporter echoing the attitude of the BBC during the Second World War. And the BBC is recognized around the world as one of the great institutions of journalism. And here we are seeing the new BBC, which is becoming, an advocate of outright anti-Semitism.
Okay, who else?
And then, of course, Hamas, which is number two. And, Hamas basically is committed to the total destruction of the state of Israel. People say West Bank, it's about the settlements. Hamas is not interested in only the settlements. Hamas is interested in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, in Jerusalem. That's who Hamas is interested in. And then, of course, Iran. Iran basically committed to the destruction of Israel. And not only that, here we are, all the Western allies, including President Biden, they want to make a deal with Iran. The deal in Iran will be on Israel's back. Iran will have the current Iranian leader, is more fanatical than the previous leader. He's committed to the total destruction of the state of Israel, and he believes that the Holocaust was a lie, never occurred. So we're doing business with him, all the Western leaders who want to make a deal with him on Israel's back. So that's why we list the top 10 every year in the hope that people will not be fooled, that people around the world, particularly non-Jews, the Jewish community is more familiar with this. The non-Jewish community needs to become familiar with this, that this is a terrible thing. That when you're dealing with Iran, all the leaders are now want to make another deal with the Iranians. But how can you make a deal? Why don't the world leaders tell the leader of Iran, do you believe the Holocaust occurred? And he's going to tell you it never occurred. It was a lie. And they should say, that's why we don't want to make a deal with you. We'd rather boycott you and make sure that your regime ends, rather than make a deal with Iran so that they can go and develop nuclear weapons. That first target will be the state of Israel. Now there's talks with Iran, and Biden, if they want to make a deal with Iran now, this is the kind of deal they should make. They should say, it's very simple. We will not discuss with you a deal until you hold your press conference and say openly that the Holocaust occurred, that it is a fact of history. If you don't want to say that as a fact of history, we don't want to deal with you.
America.
Correct. That would be the right approach.